Welcome to the Purple Mash webinars. In this short webinar, we'll explore how to create functions within the new version of TwoCode and how these can be used creatively when programming with TwoCode. So what is a function? A function is a block or a sequence of code that you can access when you need to, so you don't have to rewrite the code repeatedly. Instead, you can simply call this function each time you want it to run. The new function feature is available within FreeCode Gorilla and TwoCode Purple Chip. Let's have a look at FreeCode Gorilla first of all and launch that. You'll see on the left-hand side in the variable section here, we have a new button called Create Function and Call Function. So I've created this very simple little scene here with the built-in background, setting my background here at the bottom, and I've added in a bee. My bee is going to move around the scene and he's going to alight on each of these flowers, and each time he lands on one of these flowers, I want him to do a certain set of actions. Now, what I've done first of all is put on one hotspot here on this blue flower. I'm going to add hotspots onto each of these other flowers so that when the bumblebee flies into each of these hotspots, he's going to perform a specific set of actions. And that set of actions is going to be created and coded in a function. So let's just create those hotspots first of all. So I'm going to drag a hotspot here into this flower. Let's make it slightly smaller, and I'll continue to do that with all the other flowers. So now you can see there is a hotspot on each one of these flowers, and each hotspot has a different number. Let's go to the code window now. The first thing I've done in my code window is to create this tab called Move B, and I've used the arrow keys using this event here to create an up, down, left, right, and stop movement for my bumblebee. Let's run that code now and see how he moves. I press run and I can use the arrows on my keyboard to move him round and the space bar to stop him. Now at the moment when he's entering these hotspots, nothing's happened because I haven't coded those hotspots to do anything yet. Let's create some additional tabs up here for the rest of my code. The next tab I'm going to call Dancing Bee. And on this tab, I'm going to create the dance that I want the bee to do every time he enters into that hotspot. The third tab I'm going to create here is called Hotspots. On this Hotspots tab, I'm going to use the Hotspot Enter event for each of those hotspots. So when the bumblebee enters into hotspot number 1, something is going to happen. So I'm creating an enter hotspot for each of those hotspots. Now let's think about this. Let's go to my design. What I want him to do when he flies into a hotspot, I want him to do a little dance where he goes right, down, left and back to where he came from, and perhaps play a sound at the same time. So let's go to my code window. Now what I could do is program that series of events into each one of these hotspot enter, but that would take a lot of code and it would end up with a very long line of code on my tab here. So I'm going to create a function on this Dancing Bee tab. Let's use the create function command here, and I'm going to call the function Dancing Bee. Now when you name a function, you can't have any spaces in the name there, so I'm calling it Dancing Bee without a space. What do I want the Dancing Bee function to be? So the first thing I want is for the bee to go right, and then after a quarter second, 1/4 second, the bee is going to go down, and then again after another quarter second, I want the bee to go left. You'll notice I am nesting these timers inside each other so that one timer begins when the last timer has finished. So he's going to go left, and then he's going to go back up again to where he started, and then he's going to stop. So there is my function, Dancing Bee. There's a series of actions happening in a sequence. What I want to do is call that function, Dancing Bee, every time he enters into one of these hotspots. It's important to know in TwoCode that if I want to create a tab here on the right-hand side and then call a function or a variable, I must have created that function or variable on a tab to the left of the tab that I want to call it on. So here I have the Hotspots tab, and I want to call here in this event the Dancing Bee function. So I'm going to use this call function, drag it into there and nest it inside. When the bumblebee enters hotspot number 1, it's going to call this function, and it's called dancing bee. And that is the function I created on that tab. So let's add that into each of these. It's only giving me one function option here. I've only created one function. Now maybe for my last hotspot, I want him to do something slightly different. So I'm going to create another function here, and I'm going to call it dancing B2. Let's create a function in there which is slightly different to the dancing B1. So in the function dance2, I've actually used this repeat control. So I'm going to repeat this set of actions 3 times. So the bee is going to grow in size. He's going to add 5 to his scale. And then after, I'm going to use a timer again, after 2 quarter seconds, he's going to go back to his original size. So let's pop in here, bee, and I'll select scale, subtract 5. So I've now got dancing B2 and dancing B. Now, in order for dancing B2 to be able to be called here in the hotspot tab, I have to move it to the left of that hotspot tab. Otherwise, the hotspot tab won't recognize that function. So let's move this dancing B tab to the left of the hotspot tab. So at the bottom here, when Bumblebee enters hotspot 6, I'm going to call function dance2. So you'll now notice I've got the 2 functions available to select from, either my original dancing bee or my new dance2. Now I think I need to go back here to my dancing bee and my dancing B2 and make them even more exciting. I'm going to add a sound into my dancing bee here, and I'm going to click on this question mark, which will open up my sound picker, and I could use any one of these pre-made sounds, and there's lots more here in this drop down menu, or I could use the record functionality, which will enable me to use the microphone on my device to create my own voiceover. Bzzz, I love pollen. Let's do the same thing for dancing B2. But this time I'm going to use one of the pre-made sounds. Let's use this boing. Let's now run my code and see what's going to happen. So here's my bumblebee. I'm going to use the arrows to move him around the screen. Bzzz, I love pollen. Bzzz, I love pollen. Let's see what happens when he enters into hotspot 6. Let's have a look at some of the activities in our computing scheme of work that can be used with your class to teach the concept of functions. If I come here into the computing scheme of work and come into year 5 in coding, and let's have a look at the lesson plans. Let's skip through to lesson number 4. In this lesson, there are a number of examples. The friction example, which explores the concept of friction, but the football game example, which I'm going to click on here. This example teaches the concept of functions here in stage number 4. Let's have a look at stage 4 in this activity. So in this activity, children are going to create a function to reset the ball every time it hits a wall and reset it back to its X and Y position, which is 3 and 8. In stages 1, 2 and 3, children are creating a swipe, which is going to move the ball when you swipe it at the speed and the direction or the angle that the ball was swiped at. And in stage 4, the children create the function. So this is the code that should already be in the code window from stages 1, 2 and 3. So I'm now going to create a function to reset the ball's position back to a position of X equals 3 and Y equals 8. So the first thing I'm going to do is create the function, and I'm going to call it ball hit wall. I'm then going to drag the football into that function there, and I'm going to set the football's X value to 3, and I'm going to set the football's Y value to 8, which will reset it back to its current position. Now, I need a collision detection in here. When the football collides with the wall, I want this function here that I've created to be called. So I'm going to drag that call function, and I've called it ball hit wall,
The ball hit wall function will be called. And let's run that code and see what happens. Let's swipe my ball so that it hits a wall. There it goes, and it's going to reposition itself each time it hits the wall. Now, one thing I haven't done, so it's not giving me the next challenge button, the one thing I haven't done is I haven't reset its starting speed to 0. So let's do that in the function as well. So let's drag the football into there. Let's set its speed back to 0. And let's run that now and see if I've got that correct. Let's swipe my ball and see what happens. It's going to hit the wall and start back at its original position and slow its speed down to 0. Fantastic. I have done that challenge and I can move up to the next challenge. So using the new create function and call function commands enables you to create a block or sequence of code that you can access when you need it in your two-code program. It will mean you don't have to keep rewriting the code and will make your code much more efficient. Happy coding!